Okay, so I decided to go back to the old setup because I actually don't have a lot of times to do the new setup. And since this is final exam week, I am not going to have a lot of time to do these videos. Of course, you probably have already noticed from what I've been kind of saying in some of my previous video the last couple of weeks. And also, I'm not wearing an MLS t-shirt or jersey today. I'm actually wearing this Bayern Munich t-shirt that I bought a couple of weeks ago, and for the record, I actually have not reviewed this jersey yet. I have not done an unboxing about this jersey. I have recorded it, but I never uploaded it in my second channel, so yeah, I need to make sure to do that. I mean, I'm kind of starting to lose track in terms of uploading this kind of unboxing that I recorded a couple of weeks ago and not even uploaded in my second channel. But yeah, either way, gonna be doing the power rankings today, and today I am actually gonna look the power rankings on my phone right here. I actually had the picture of the power rankings that I did, so a little bit kind of technical knowledgeable. I usually look either on my notebook or on my screen, but I decided to just look at on my phone today. So in 23rd, we have another new bottom feeder this week, and this one probably is the most convincing bottom feeder we had in recent week. And this team was also the biggest loser this week, and that of course is Montreal, who lost 8 spots from last week. And part of the reason why they were the biggest loser was because they lost both of their game this week. They had a midweek game this week, which they lost to Chicago on the road 1-0. And then on Saturday, they lose at home against Philadelphia. Yeah, that is the same Philly team that hasn't scored in over 200 minutes for pretty much the second time this season, and they lose to them. I mean, it's been an absolute horror week for every Montreal Impact fans to deal with, and the team is just a one-man team, this Montreal Impact team. I mean, without Piatti, this team is just as garbage as it gets, and you know, I don't know what to say after what happened this week. I mean, it's bad enough that you lose to Chicago, which is one of the teams that, you know, are probably around your category of how good they are this season in MLS, but it's just incredible how they can be playing at home against Philadelphia, who is the worst team in my opinion in the league right now, and they lose to them. And they were also up a man for about 10 minutes in that game, and they still lost that one. I mean, it is sad to be a Montreal fan. But pretty much, you're going to see here in the bottom list, there is going to be a lot of teams that are kind of in a bit of a depressing kind of stage right now. And one of the other team that is in that stage, in number 22, and this team stays at the same spot, is Vancouver, who somehow in the last game came from should have won that game to almost losing that game. I mean, this team had so many opportunities against Houston to potentially put away that crucial second goal, and yet somehow in some way they couldn't do it. One of their player, and I'm not even gonna have to mention his name anymore because you know who he is, made an absolute horrendous miss from 7 yards out that should have given Vancouver the lead with 5 minutes left in the game. And just to make that worse and add insult to injury, they go down 2-1 in that game, and it wasn't for Kendall Watson that kind of salvaged their kind of dignity for a bit. They probably would have been in dead last. They would have probably in 23rd because of how bad Vancouver has been. I mean, the Whitecaps are in just some really, really bad form right now, and I think they have started to fall down the I haven't actually checked the standings in the Western Conference yet, but I'm pretty sure they're not third anymore. I'll be shocked if they're still third right now in the Western Conference. But yeah, in 21st, and this team moves down 2 spots from last week, and this team continues to lose, is the Rapids, who I think after this loss against the Red Bulls, they have lost 3 in a row right now. And after all that promising start that they had, and the fact that they were kind of like hovering around the red line, it has just gone completely. It just that kind of good start that they had just completely been erased with what happened in these last couple of games, where they just does not look like a good team anymore. They look like a team that is what we kind of expected from the Rapids, which is a very bad team. And I won't be surprised they're going to be stuck in this area for a bit, because the Rapids are not very good, and we kind of knew that too. But yeah, in 20th, and this is another team that we know that is not going to be good this year, and they also lost this week, and that of course is DC United. Now DC did not lose any spot or gain any spot. They actually stayed the same spot. And I think the benefit of the doubt for DC United, despite the fact that they lost to RSL, is that at least they put up a fight in that game. And the fact that they were on the road in that game. And the fact that they were down to 10 men and they still almost complete a miraculous comeback against RSL. But at the end of the day, DC United, alongside with Colorado, Vancouver, and Montreal, are just in that group, just kind of a group that is just in a very bad form, and that they are just a very bad team that potentially have no shots of actually making the playoffs. And in 19th place, and this team continues to tumble down, and now are down to 19, which is, I believe this is the worst spot they have in the power rankings this season. And that, of course, is the Galaxy. I mean, what can you say about the Galaxy that hasn't been said already? They have lost 4 in a row coming into this match week number 12, and they just continues to tumble down the power rankings. It's hard to believe that I think back in the beginning of April that they were like right up around here in the power rankings, and everything was going so well for the Galaxy that it looked like this was the year that they can basically turn it around. But just 4 losses in a row, and now they are finding themselves pretty much buried in that group on the Western Conference, where it is a group that you do not want to be. Like that is a group of just teams that is really bad this season, and that it doesn't seem like there is much hope this season that they can recover and make the playoffs. And right now for the Galaxy, that is where they kind of belong. And unless they end this long losing streak that they have, which I believe this is one of the longest, if not the longest losing streak right now in MLS, this team is just going to be like last season, where they are probably going to be right near the bottom of the table. And it's hard to believe that the most successful franchise in MLS in just the last 2 years, and it feels like ever since Bruce Arena left the Galaxy, this team just completely tumbled down in the league. And it's just pretty much now for the Galaxy, this is probably the toughest time they're going through in franchise history. And you gotta remember, the Galaxy were one of the original members in this league, and yeah. And these two teams, the Galaxy and DC United, these two teams were kind of original members of MLS, and each of these two teams had such a great success in the MLS, and it's hard to believe now they are just tumbling down, and they just don't look relevant anymore this season. But yeah, and in 18, as my phone accidentally turned off there, in 18th place, and this team moved up 5 spots from last week, and I'm very happy that they're finally moving back up a level in the power rankings. And that, of course, is my Quakes, who finally end that 7-game winless streak. I know I said 8 in the match week preview and the match week vlog that I did, but it turns out it was actually 7. But it felt like longer than 7 with the way how it has been going through. But finally we ended, and would you believe the team that we ended was the team that we last got a win? That was Minnesota. And, the Quakes, the reason why they moved up so high, despite the fact that, going on the road against Minnesota, you wouldn't expect them to move up that high in the power rankings, but because of the fact that a lot of these teams down here are just really bad this season and having some long losing streak, and how I just feel like if one of these teams can end their losing streak, they're just gonna go up the table, because that is how it is. This category right here is the fertility level right now. But in 17th, and this team lost 3 spots, and they could have been in that fertility level if they didn't win on Wednesday against the Montreal Impact, and that, of course, is Chicago, who lost 3-0 to the Crew. They were absolutely dominated in that game against the Crew, but at least they did get a win doing these 2 games that they had this match week, which is why I did not move them down right around the bottom level of the power rankings. And in 16th place, and this team is another team that is very similar to Chicago, who won their midweek game but lost their weekend game, and that, of course, is the Sounder, who actually moved up 2 spots from last week. And the reason why I decided to move the Sounder up, even though they have only won their midweek game and lost their weekend game, is because the Sounders had to travel for both of their games. And, I actually moved Seattle all the way up to 12th in the midweek power rankings, which I didn't, of course, do a video, but it is something that I usually tends to do in terms of these power rankings. Whenever there's a midweek game, I usually adjust kind of the power rankings, and it's also kind of explained to you guys that these power rankings, they change even when there's a midweek game, and even when I'm not doing a power rankings there, and they also change every single day too. So a team that play on Friday, they could move up or down, and a team play on Wednesday, they could do the same thing. So the Sounders, I moved them up right around 12 in the midweek, and I moved them back down to 16 because they lost to Portland. Now, if they beat Portland, I would have probably put them at 11 or 10, because that's a very impressive week for the Sounders, considering the fact that they had to travel all the way across the other side of the country and then have to travel back to play their biggest rival on the same week. If they can win both of those, that would be impressive. But unfortunately, they didn't win both of them. They only won one of them. But it's still impressive that the Sounder beat Toronto in the midweek game, because nobody gave them chance. Not even me gave them a chance that they can potentially get something out of that game. But yeah, in 15th, and this team moved up 6 spots from last week, and this is kind of the same explanation I have with my Quakes team. And that, of course, is the Union. And, the Union gets the benefit of the doubt that they ended that long winless run they have on the road, and the fact that a lot of the teams around them lost. So they basically kind of moved up by the same reason as how my Quakes team moved up. And yeah, I think this is probably one of the highest the Union has moved up in the power rankings this season. I should know what's the highest they have been in the power rankings, because I just did a power rankings kind of review video through the quarter mark last week, and for some reason I can't remember exactly what was the highest they have been. But yeah, in 14th place, and once again my phone gets switched off. Probably I shouldn't be using my phone as a way to look at the power rankings and write it up there next time. But yeah, in 14th place, And this team moves down 2 spots from last week, and that is Minnesota. So the reason why I didn't move Minnesota way down in the power rankings, despite the fact that they did lose 2 of their matches in the midweek, is that I thought Minnesota, in that midweek game against LAFC, it wasn't very good. But in that game against the Quakes, they were at time very unlucky. I mean, they actually played very well against the Quakes, and they unfortunately just couldn't take advantage of their chances. And yeah, that's why they moved. They've been moved down to 14th in the power rankings and in 13th place. And this team moved down 6th place from last week. And this is probably the same reason as the Montreal Impact. And that, of course, is TFC. And just like the Impact, they lost both of their games. And both of those games were painful losses. I mean, against the Sounders, with pretty much everything kind of is in favor of them, with the fact that they have a home game. They're playing the Sounders team that is just struggling, and the Sounders had to go all the way across the other side of the country to play this game, and yet they still find a way to lose that one. And to make things even worse, they go to New England, and you would think that New England hasn't been as good as it has been the last couple of weeks when they were on that hot streak, and you would think that would probably be the one where they can bounce back. Nope, they lost that one too, and now the potential is not going to get Javinko for the next match, because he is, well, it's not potential, he is not going to be in the next match because he got sent off in the last game, because he basically put a hand in front of an opponent, and in MLS turn, that is an automatic red card every time when a player puts a face in the opponent. So yeah, TFC is kind of like going through tough time right now, and in 12th place, this team moves up, I believe, 2 places from last week, and that is RSL. So RSL, they beat DC United, and I was gonna probably put RSL at the same spot as where they were last week, because they beat DC United and they didn't really beat them very convincingly. I mean, there was some nervous moment at the end of the game, but because of the fact that the team around them either win or lost, and most of them kind of lost around their spots, they do moved up 2 spots from that, and it's pretty generous for me to move them up 2 spots. I mean, I know you would think that it's not a big kind of jump, but the fact that they play against DC United, who was the worst team in the league, and they barely kind of got through that one, and they were up a man in that game, just kind of makes me do not want them to move up. But they did move up because teams around them lost. And then in 11th place, and this team moved up 2 spots also, and that, of course, is Houston. So this is also kind of the same reason. Houston, I didn't want to move them up after the fact that they blew another lead on the road. That's their 3rd lead that they have blown on the road in 4 road trip that they have this season. I kind of feel like they should be moving down instead of moving up, but consider what happened in that game against Vancouver, where they were pretty much just getting dominated in that game, and they still able to come out with a draw. Yeah, I would say that that's you could say that maybe that's a good result, but then again, the fact that they blew that lead, and the fact that they couldn't really close out another road game is the reason why that. Well, actually, if they would have closed out that game, I would have probably still put them at 11, because I still didn't think that was a very kind of. Vancouver is a struggling team, and even though they did win on the road, and this could have been the first road win of the year, I would have probably stayed them around the same spot, because Vancouver are just really bad right now. But they get the benefit of the doubt that teams around them have lost their games and had to move down. And in 9th place, This team, or not in ninth place, but in 10th place, this team moved up one spot from last week, and that, of course, is Portland. Now, I kind of feel like I should have probably moved Portland up a little bit higher, but the reason why I only moved them up one spot is because, in that game against the Sounders, they really had to fight hard for that. And if they would have drawn that game, I probably would have put them right around the same spot as they are. But, they did get a victory, and I definitely had to move them up because of that. Usually, when a team gets a victory, I have to move them up, and I moved them up one spot like that. And in ninth place, this team moves up one spot also, and that is NYCFC, who, you're going to see it later on with LAFC in the standings. I moved them up one spot because of the fact that they gave us such an entertaining match in that game. I mean, that was a very, very exciting match. And if they would have lost that one, it would be really tough for me to actually move them down one spot because they were fighting very hard alongside with LAFC in that game to get the winner, and it would have been harsh if they moved them down one spot because I didn't think they played that badly. They played really good in that match against LAFC. And then in 8th place, and this team moves up 2 spots from last week, and that, of course, is the Revs. So the Revs are still hanging in there in the top 10 spot. They moved back up to 8th because they beat TFC in this latest match week. And yeah, the Revs are, and as long as the Revs are still above the red line, I would think that unless they start to have a really bad run, they would be right around this same spot. I think the Revs is gonna be kind of like right around this same spot throughout this year if they can continue what they're doing, because I think this Revs team is a team that if they continue this, I think they're going to make the playoffs. But at the same time, I don't think that they're gonna go very high up in the table because it's a side that is kind of like overachieving, but it's not at a point where they overachieve and then they just started to climb up the table, which they could definitely do that if they continue winning some of these games. But judging by the fact that what the Revs have done this season, where they kind of overachieved, but there have been times where they kind of started to cool off a little bit. And I think before this TFC game and before they beat TFC, that is probably the point where they kind of cooled off a little bit with a couple of losses and a couple of draws. And in 7th place, and this team actually stay at the same spot, and that, of course, is FC Dallas. So Dallas did beat the Galaxy. They beat them 3-2, but the reason why I definitely did not move them up is because they were playing against the Galaxy, and they actually almost lost this one. Or not lost this one, but they almost drew this one because Zlatan had a free kick that literally just bounced off the bar late in the game, and probably that should have been free at that point. And for Dallas, since they're a team that is right around near the top area, and this kind of goes the same with the Revs in terms of the reason why Dallas is probably not going to move up a lot, is because some of these teams around here is definitely better than what Dallas is right now in terms of the form. And I think that unless Dallas or the Revs start to have a good run and then these teams potentially started to lose, then they're going to be right around the same area where they are right now, around 7th and 8th place. But in 6th place, and speaking of how teams that is around the top area are losing, in 6th place, this team drops down how much? 5 spots. And this team was actually top last week. I forgot to mention Orlando City was actually top last week, but now they fall down to 6th place because they lost to Atlanta, and they basically just completely trashed the pitch because the fans were so angry that they lost to Atlanta. And the numerous bad call that was against their team. But this is the thing about being on the top in this power rankings, because it doesn't take a lot for each team here on the top to potentially drop down in my power rankings. I mean, if they lose one match, and you've seen it with NYCFC, who used to be always on the top, but recently they haven't looked very decent, and look where they're right now, in ninth place. And in many ways, I feel like being on the top and just kind of like try to sustain on the top spot is always the hardest, because as soon as you lose one game, I have to drop these teams down, because most likely the team around them are going to win that game, and they just gets kind of shuffled and gets dropped all the way down in 6th place. And in 5th place, this team moved up 3 spots from last week, and that of course is Sporting KC. So Sporting KC didn't play this week, but they did win in their midweek game, so I guess you could say that they kind of did play in Matchweek 11, and it was a very impressive win against Atlanta United. And, you know, Sporting KC last week against, or it wasn't last week, but 2 weeks ago, they lost to the New England Revolution, and they were like right up the top. This is the same reason. They kind of got dropped all the way down because of the fact that they lost that one game, and teams around them goes up. I mean, you know what I mean now. I don't really need to kind of explain again about that. But yeah, in 4th place, and this team is moving up in the power rankings, and that is Columbus, who, you know, they continues to move up, and they're back to where they were right in the beginning of the season. Remember, Columbus was at one point was as high as 2nd because they had this really good winning streak that people were talking about, but then all of a sudden they started to have that really bad stretch and moved down the table. But now they started to have a good stretch once again, and now they are back up to 4th place. I mean, it's been a roller coaster ride for the Columbus Crew season. Not only the fact that they're worried about potentially this being the last season for the Crew, but it's also because of how things are just going up, going down at a couple of weeks ago, and now going back up because they had that 5-game winless streak, which a lot of people are not talking about. This 5-game winless streak, or not winless streak, but this 5-game kind of unbeaten streak has been pretty kind of flying under the radar. But yeah, and in 3rd place, and this team moves down 1 spot, and that of course is LAFC, who, like what I said about the NYCFC situation, they drew against them and they produced a very exciting kind of match, and therefore they moved up 1 spot because of that. And you know, LAFC, I know that some people is going to kind of be mad at me for the fact that I moved them up this high, considering the fact that they are not really doing that well. I mean, they've been kind of dropping points there and there, but you also got to remember that LAFC have not lost a game ever since the Atlanta game. They have been unbeaten through, I think, 6 games now and 5 games, and as long as they don't lose a match, and as long as they look very competitive in these kind of matches, they are going to be right around this spot. And I think LAFC right now is one of the best team right now in the league. The only reason why they haven't looked that good recently is because they started to suffer some injuries on their team, mostly Marco Aurelian not being on this team, and how it started to become a bit of a problem in the attacking end, where they started to kind of struggle to try to create some chances in the attacking end. But other than that, they're still grinding out result, and as long as they do that, they are going to continue to move up in the table. And in 3rd place, or not 3rd place, in 2nd place actually, and this team moves up 1 spot and continues to make their way up the table. And I think this is the highest that the Red Bulls has gone this season. They of course moved up 1 spot from last week, and the Red Bulls right now, despite the fact that they are currently 5th in the Western Conference, or not Western Conference, Eastern Conference, that is, they currently have the second best points per game record. And if every team right now have played the same game, the Red Bulls would be second right now in the standing. They would be right near where Atlanta United has. And speaking of which, I might as well just put Atlanta right up here now, because they of course remain in that first spot. So I know Atlanta did lose to that midweek game against Sporting KC, but they bounced back with an impressive win against Orlando City on the road. And in that Sporting KC game, there was a couple of times where they were pretty unlucky to not score a goal or two, and the fact that they were also so down to 10 men in that game. But Atlanta, they are still by far the best team in the league right now. I think they're currently second in the Supporters Shield standing. I think Sporting KC is still first, but Atlanta is currently top in the Eastern Conference. And unless Atlanta does not start to lose another game and continue this really good form that they've been having pretty much throughout the whole season. I mean, Atlanta right now has been one of the most consistent teams so far this season. I mean, the only time where I thought Atlanta was you could kind of question them was probably the first game of the season. Other than that, throughout this whole stretch, they have not looked like a team that you would say that they have some real issue on their team, and because of that, they are on the top part of the standing in my power rankings. And yeah, that of course is another edition of this power rankings. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of the power rankings? Did I rate a couple team too high, or did I rate a couple team too low? But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and yeah, I will see you guys next time.